A basic guide on how Bitcoin transactions work. Bitcoin. Magical internet money. You press send and off it goes, never to return again. No questions asked ever. But how does it really work? What happens when it comes time to send it and it gets whisked away so effortlessly? All completely valid questions. And here at BeInCrypto, we've got you covered. Let's get into it. At its most basic level, a Bitcoin transaction is simply a transfer of value between two wallets. This transfer that occurs is recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain. To send money from a Bitcoin wallet, the sender must sign the Bitcoin transaction with his or her private key as proof of ownership of funds. There are three main parts to a Bitcoin transaction: an input, also known as the record of your address; an amount, the specific amount of Bitcoin you're planning to send over the network; an output, the public key, aka wallet address you're sending the Bitcoin to. When sending Bitcoin, you must have access to the private key that is associated with the specific amount you're trying to send, and also the public key that is holding that specific Bitcoin. The public key is going to be enclosed in the Bitcoin wallet. The wallet address is a hashed version of the public key, and the keys themselves are random combinations of numbers and letters that function like a password and a username. These keys are public, so it's okay to share them with other people, especially when they want to send you some Bitcoin. Your private key has a setup that is similar, and it's called a private key for a reason. You must keep it private. Anyone that has it can spend the Bitcoin. Private keys are used to sign off transactions. They take different forms, which makes them much more challenging to crack. You can compare public and private addresses to a mailbox. The public address is the box itself. It's where you send your mail. The private key is the key to get into that mailbox. Only the person with the key can open up the box and get the mail inside. In Bitcoin's case, it's the Bitcoin sitting at the public address. As Bitcoin wallet addresses are publicly available, since after all they are on a public blockchain, anyone can see the address on the Bitcoin blockchain and figure out how much Bitcoin is being stored at that address. But nobody can move the funds off of that address without permission or the private key. Say you want to send some Bitcoin to your friend. You would use the private key to sign the transaction. The message is then sent on the Bitcoin network, containing the input, which is your address, and the amounts, how much is being sent, and the output, your friend's address. The transaction is then broadcast to the entire Bitcoin network. Miners verify that your keys can access the funds you are claiming to control. So far, we've learned some important properties of Bitcoin transactions. 1. They are irreversible. When a transaction confirms on the Bitcoin blockchain, it is irreversible. You're not going to get your Bitcoin back if you mess up. There's no customer service that can simply reverse the transaction. You're on your own. So it's important to take the time to learn about all of that responsibility that comes with using Bitcoin. Once it leaves your wallet, it's never coming back. Number 2. They're pseudonymous. Transactions and wallets on the Bitcoin network aren't connected to any actual human identities. There's no sign up or registration process you must go through in order to be allowed to use the network. It's completely open and permissionless, which is a fresh change of pace from our current financial system, and a welcome change that is. Transactions can be de-anonymized though. Know your customer and anti-money laundering laws in many countries have enabled a burgeoning chain analysis industry that can track and analyze the flow of transactions over the network, sometimes even connecting them to real-world identities. 3, they're on a global scale, and they're fast. A Bitcoin transaction on the network is conducted almost instantly. The network is comprised of computers all around the world, and Bitcoin can be sent anywhere. There's no middleman, and there's no border to stop you. And number 4, they're secure. All of the funds in Bitcoin are locked into a cryptographic system. Only people holding onto the private keys can send Bitcoin to another wallet address. When the funds get sent out, they're first broadcasted to the network, where miners confirm their validity before adding them to the blockchain. A decentralized process such as this helps to ensure that nobody can hijack your transactions in the middle and steal or divert your funds in any way. Transaction verification and how it works. Every 10 minutes-ish. A new block is added to the Bitcoin blockchain, but exactly how does this verification work? Once you sign off on a transaction with your private keys, the transaction is then sent out into the mempool, where it will then linger until it is picked up by a miner. A mempool is simply a waiting area for transactions to be verified by a node, pending until a miner picks it up and inserts it into a block. If a transaction is not picked up by a miner, it will remain in the pool of unconfirmed transactions, basically a list of transactions waiting to be verified. The transactions that miners do pick up from these pools are then confirmed into a block, which is a collection of transactions sent out to the network. Before a transaction is included in a block, that miner has to ensure that the transaction is valid. They're able to do this by checking to see if there are sufficient funds in the sender's wallet to execute the transaction. Once the transaction is added to the block, the miner must find a signature before it can add the block to the blockchain. This is done through proof of work algorithm that allows miners to find an eligible signature for the block by solving a complex mathematical problem. Once the miner finds the eligible signatures, it broadcasts the block and the signature to the other Bitcoin miners. The other miners also verify the legitimacy of the signature. If the signature is valid, a consensus is reached and the block is included in the blockchain. Once the block is added to the network, it is then distributed to the nodes, which save it to their transaction data. After a block has been added to the blockchain, other blocks add the count as a confirmation for that block. Yeah, that's a lot of blocks. For example, if your transaction was included in block 400 and the blockchain is now 403 blocks along, your transaction in block 400 would now have 3 confirmations. The term confirmation is used because each time miners add a new block on top of it, the blockchain must reach a consensus again on the block and the transactions in it. You can use something called a block explorer to track Bitcoin transactions, and most wallets will let you know when your transaction has been confirmed on the blockchain. Transaction confirmations are ideally confirmed in a matter of minutes. However, if the network is unusually busy or you've attached a very small miner fee, you may end up waiting for longer. A miner fee is an incentive for miners to get the work done verifying all of the transactions. You can look up the current fees by searching for the Bitcoin mempool. There are numerous sites that will give you an accurate current fee price. That way you don't over or underpay for your transaction on the Bitcoin network. Currently, the Bitcoin network has a max block size of 1 megabyte. This limits the amount of data/transactions and can cause the fees to increase substantially as everybody is fighting for a limited space. So there are pros and cons of using Bitcoin. First, the good stuff. Number 1, it gives you autonomy. Bitcoin allows you to transfer money while maintaining anonymity, or at least in theory. This is something that traditional assets don't necessarily allow you to do. And number 2, peer-to-peer transfers. We discussed this a little bit earlier, but with Bitcoin, there is no middleman waiting to tell you no. You have complete control over who you send your money to. And number 3, there are no banking fees. You can store that precious Bitcoin in a wallet for as long as you'd like without having to pay any maintenance fees to anyone. You no longer have to bother with all of those made-up fees banks create to slowly nickel and dime you out of your own money. And number 4, speed and low fees for international payments. Bitcoin doesn't care about borders. If you pay your miner fee, the transaction will be broadcast through the entire network, regardless of any imaginary line. And some of the cons of using Bitcoin. Number 1, transactions can be slow. When the network is congested, transactions can be mind-numbingly slow. You better make sure to pay your miner fee and make sure it's large enough or you could be waiting a long time, even days in some extreme cases. And number 2, volatility. Bitcoin is new. It's in the process of price discovery, and as is such, prone to wild price swings. This volatility is not for the faint of heart. A 50% drop can challenge even the most hardcore Bitcoiners. Kind of reminds me of a meme I heard about Bitcoin. If you can't handle my 50% losses, you don't deserve my 500% gains, or something like that. But you get the point. Okay, everyone, that's about it for me. Transactions on the Bitcoin network can be pretty complicated, but I hope I cleared it up for you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all next video.